that. Don't do that.
Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and we are live. Tonight we have a great panel, and we are going to talk about those albums where the cracks started to form. So it's not saying that these albums are bad, but these are the records where really they never came back after these. So we're live. Get ready. We want to hear from you in the chat. Let's do it.
Grant is changing the world one track at a time on Grant's Rock Warehouse.
Holy crap, and we are live. I want to welcome everybody here. We're going to keep this one interactive tonight, ladies and gentlemen, and we do want to hear from you as we go through these tracks, because these are all our personal opinion. So we're just going to talk about those records where we think that the cracks started to form on a band. Now, everybody knows my thing is Queen the Game, and I'm going to bring it up, of course, just to upset young Logan. But everybody's got their picks. We've got so many picks. We might do a part 2. You never know. But we want to keep it interactive. We want everybody to have fun. And it's just fun. It's just a good exercise. I want to welcome the panel tonight. BM Bolt, Johnny Metal, DC Toontime, John the Music Nut, and Todd Evans. We are here and we are ready to talk albums that I'm not even sure what I called it. Albums where the cracks start to form. It could be anything. But anyway, welcome, panel. How are you? Nice to see you.
Great. Good. Should be lively tonight.
It should be a lively
Got a
discussion.
lot of folks already in the chat.
Oh, why can't I see them? I can't see them for some reason. Oh, there they are. Oh, there they are. Oh, wow. Look at all the people. Here we go. George already starting us off. Tubes Love Bomb.
Oh, disagree vehemently.
Love Bomb is so good.
Vehemently.
See, there we are already on a. Now we've already got a controversial topic.
Go back and watch this show we did on that album.
We did a show on Love Bomb. I think you guys may need to give Love Bomb another shot. Steve and Dave, his crack started to form when he was born. That's good. Mrs. BM Bolt. Oh my goodness.
Mrs. Bolt.
You know Ernesto. He's hit and miss. Come on. Peter Jones is saying Kiss Love Gun.
No, it comes after that, but
I think
it's an interesting idea, though. But everybody, here we go. Black Sabbath. I could see it. Black Sabbath, Technical Ecstasy. You might see that tonight. I don't know. It depends upon where we go. So okay, here's the goal, everybody. I've asked everybody to give me 3 picks and some honorable mentions. But since we do want to keep it interactive and we want to hear from people in the chat, we're here just talking music. We might be able to do a second show, like I said. So we'll see. Let's just get started. I'm going to start with Mr. BM Bolt, go to Johnny Metal, DC Toontime, John the Music Nut, Todd Evans, and then myself. And let's just do one apiece. And you never know, because I'm sure it's going to spur some conversation. So, Mr. Bolt, you want to start us off tonight?
All right. I'm going to say, first of all, that in the case of at least one of my picks, they actually did come back. Sometimes you need to get rid of somebody in the band and get somebody else, and that saves you. Sometimes that crack can be fixed. But so my first pick, and I know there's going to be a lot of disagreement tonight. But
let's see where we go.
What I got here. So my first band, their first 6 albums are total classics. It's one of the greatest runs of 6 albums you'll ever see. They created a genre, all right? The last of those first 6 albums was this. Probably my favorite album by Black Sabbath. We're already getting into this. But my opinion is the first crack started showing on this album, Technical Ecstasy, which Jason had already mentioned.
Yeah.
I don't dislike this album. It's just, to me, a big drop off from the first 6. They were changing their sound. They were going less doomy. Punk was starting to take off. They were trying to do some different things. And to me, it just wasn't working. There was way too much alcohol and drugs going on in the band. And it just isn't as good as those other albums. So that's why I'm picking that. The follow-up, to me, it's the same situation, although I like this a little bit better. I think the songs are a little better on this one, but I know a lot of people will disagree with me on that. But, Ozzy quit before they made this album and then came back. So there's more cracks happening. And it was too late to save them at this point. So, but they did salvage themselves by bringing on Dio.
Oh, yes.
They made this album.
True.
So, I still don't think that the Dio era is as good as the first 6 Ozzy albums, but hey.
Oh, I think it's better.
Nah.
It's
I'm always
deep.
going to go with the first 6
Do
albums.
you realize who you're talking about?
When I
Ronnie
reach-
James Dio.
When I reach for a Sabbath
I
album
think it's
these
much better.
days, it is my number one go-to is Heaven and Hell. Now that first 6 Sabbath album run
Right there.
is tremendous, but boy, that first album they did with Ryan James Dio is like a 10 out of 10 to the 10th power for me. Yeah.
I don't think anything on Heaven. I don't think Heaven and Hell beats. It might beat 1 or 2 of the first 6, but the first 6 are just.
Okay, here we go.
Here we go. I already disagree.
No, this is why
That's
we're
good.
doing this
That's
show.
good. We all
It's
hear
about the
different.
conversation. Jeff says technical ecstasy sounded like they were out of ideas. Never Say Die was at least some experimental things going. What's the peanut gallery think? I'm just curious.
I like Never Say Die, and I also like Technical Ecstasy, but I think that Byron's right. I agree.
Yeah, there was a
agree
bit
with
of,
him.
I agree.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a drop off, and I always find it funny when I listen to all moving parts on Technical Ecstasy. Geezer's bass line, that is like a disco funk bass line, which I never thought I'd hear on a Sabbath album. Boom, 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 boom. It really is. So, I mean, they were kind of
Jason.
spinning their wheels a little bit.
Jason, I'm going to have to take your wrench. I'm just joking. No one can disagree with me. No one can disagree with me. That's the whole thing with this show.
For me, if I'm going to listen to Sabbath, my first go-to is Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. I probably have only listened to those Dio albums maybe 2 or 3 times a piece in my life.
Oh my God, we're gonna have to
just-
take Johnny Metal's his ID card away.
Just saying, folks.
Really?
Yeah, I never gravitated to the Dio era. I just
Wow.
Oh, by the way,
I never gravitated to Dio. Period.
Wow.
Johnny Metal's.
When I got introduced to Dio, it was because of Vivian Campbell. I was a big Vivian fan. I didn't care about what Ronnie was singing. That didn't do anything for me. I was more interested in Vivian.
The hate's starting to come.
Jeff, bringing it.
Don't worry, Jeff. My pickle will take care of that.
Okay, wait a minute. Helligard, add Heaven and Hell, the band name, not only the album, and it's Dio era for me. I always liked you, Helligard. Like you a lot. George, Technical Ecstasy has some good songs, but you can hear Ozzy sounding a little tired on the album. You have to admit, I think that's probably valid because, once he did the solo thing, he got to rest a little bit and he sounds pretty energetic there. I can see that. I'd reach for Dio late 80s material more these days. Okay. Kyle says, whatever Grant says. I like you, Kyle. It's the way it should be in this show. Dio, Sacred Heart. Oh, I don't think anybody mentioned any. Well, we're talking Dio kind of, but I don't think anybody brought any of those albums
I thought
up.
about
Did you-
Dio.
Did you see what Tony posted?
Where?
Johnny 10.
Come on.
Come on, y'all.
Tony, come on.
You haven't even heard my pick yet. So
Really?
Oh, ooh, Tony, that's harsh.
that is harsh. Dude.
Okay, real quick before we go on to the next artist, George, what's everyone's thought on the Tony Martin era? And I'm just going to say that I've never.
It's hit or miss, in my opinion. It's either
That's
great
what-
or just okay. Eternal Idol is fantastic, and so is the Headless Cross. Both fantastic.
Yeah,
The others
I
are
don't-
okay.
I don't listen to a whole lot of it, but what I do remember is after that first album that Tony did with with him. He told him, "Hey, on the next one, let's cut back a little bit on the demonic worship." He felt like he was getting a little bit too much into that with what he was writing.
Maybe. Dio. Jason, Dio is technically a better singer, but there was magic with Iommi and Ozzy. Panel agree with that?
I would agree.
Yeah, that's the Sabbath sound with Ozzy on vocals. But if I'm just wanting to listen to something in 2024 from Sabbath, my first reach is for Heaven and Hell. That's just where my head is right now. So,
Peter Jones, love the Tony Martin era. Again, a completely different band.
Yeah, because it's pretty much just Tony, I think, that's left. Tony Iommi. I don't think even Geezer's even on most of those albums. So
Jeff loves the hell out of the guitar tone on the Martin era. I think the guitar tone on the Dio era is killer. Iommi sounds inspired. It's like a total rebirth of the band when Dio got in the band. You have
Just not as good though.
I just feel like he rejuvenated and lit a fire underneath all of them. That's the way I hear it. But that's what's so fascinating about this. We're all rabid music lovers, yet we all hear it kind of different.
Peter can't compare eras. Hilliger, I consider The Devil You Know a Sabbath album, rather same roster as Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules.
It's all right.
Well, there you go. So Technical Ecstasy, I don't know. I don't mind that album at all, but I can see your point.
Yeah.
You know.
Cracks are showing.
Cracks are showing. There are cracks. Jeff, no argument. Dio was great, but Martin is underappreciated. All right. Wow, you guys are all over it. Again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. We've got 46. Hopefully we get some more. We should. Boy, last night, if you didn't pop in, I did the Pomp Rock Show listening party. I had I think the most I had was 60 people watching that. That's the biggest. That's pretty damn good for me.
That is impressive. That's good.
I didn't even have Pete Pardo on the show, and it got good
There
numbers.
you go. People were there for purely the music content.
It was good.
And
It was
Grant,
good.
of course.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. Regardless of all other vocalists, in my opinion, Ozzy was Black Sabbath.
That is the Sabbath sound, just like with Van Halen. The sound of Van Halen is with David Lee Roth. Whether you prefer Sammy or not, that is the template.
Technical didn't have the occult themes like the other previous, right?
Correct.
Nah, not really.
Well, look at the cover. It's about goddamn robots breeding on an escalator.
Robots having sex on an elevator. Fantastic.
Jeff, you should do yourself a favor and buy that Angel album with the tower on it, of
That's
course.
a good one.
Thanks, Steven. All right, let's keep it moving. That was a good... This is how I like to do the show. Spend some time on this. We're not in a rush. We're not trying to get down to the... Well, it is 8:14. We should try to do it an hour. Maybe we'll go around at once.
Maybe we'll only do one.
We might get.
We get one each.
Well, mine won't take too long.
It's kind of funny.
Nobody's going to spend time on.
Oh,
mine,
wait,
so.
everybody. Let's take a moment. Marlon's here with a W, whatever that means. Gosh,
Very
gotta have...
cryptic. He's cryptic.
I guess.
What? W.
Okay. We could have done this. Should have been a Black Sabbath show. Could you imagine?
Yeah.
Black Sabbath featuring Tony Iommi for 7th Star always felt weird. Oh, wait a minute, everybody. Take another moment for Ernesto, who couldn't be here
Oh,
tonight.
Ernesto. Nice to have you with us, Ernesto.
Nice.
Even
Thanks.
in the chat. Even if it's
3
only
hour
in the
show. We could do it, but we're not going to do that. We got to keep something coming up, something to look forward to. Can't wait to hear Johnny's picks. Johnny
geez.
Metal is up, Jeff.
Oh boy, no pressure now.
No pressure. Okay, John, go
All right,
ahead.
well-
What's your first pick?
Okay, so my first picks, mine's going to be not quite as well known as Byron's was. So mine, we're gonna travel to the land of Switzerland.
Oh, very nice for skiing.
Yes, very nice for skiing. If you're a wrestling fan, you'll know. Help me, John. What's Claudio Castagnoli? And
Yes.
So there you go. We're gonna go to the land of death metal, black metal, extreme metal, that kind of sound.
Oh.
Okay.
I'm ready.
We are talking about a band that was basically a trio for the most part. And the album that I'm going to be referencing is Celtic Frost, Into the Pandemonium. Now, you're probably going to wonder, why am I picking that? But everybody would probably think that's going to be the one I pick.
Definitely.
Nope. This one shows. And I was looking, and here's why I say it's a Megatheron. Absolute classic in death metal, black metal, extreme metal. Absolute brutal album. Here they start going a little more avant-garde in their sound, a little different. There's some vocals here that are kind of tragic sounding, kind of whiny sounding. I think a little bit of different stuff like that. There's just a lot of different stuff going on this album. So the difference here, though, was Tom Warrior was getting a lot of flack from the record company. And the record company was forcing a lot of stuff on Tom and the band to say, hey, we either need you guys to go do these tour dates or you're just not going to get the support to do this album, to do the production on this album and get the promotion that you need. So basically this album was getting pretty heavy. Did Dio sing for Celtic Frost? Oh boy.
He should have.
Anyway, so this comes out and it doesn't totally alienate the core Celtic Frost fans, but it didn't do quite the numbers and expectations that I think Tom wanted. Tom, when he goes into his thoughts and his music here, he takes it pretty seriously. And so, it was a big deal for him. So the cracks really start going. And then basically Tom's like, okay, y'all can just do whatever you want. And then that's when this thing comes out, which Tom G. Warrior basically calls an abomination. Nobody else is, but Tom is in this band. It's a totally different version of the band. And they basically go glam metal, which to go from this to that, oof. The cracks were like earthquake size with this one, but they were you could definitely tell that they were coming on Into the Pandemonium. Now, this isn't a bad album. This is actually a very good album and still a very critically acclaimed album. It does have a very strange cover of Mexican Radio. So go figure that one out. But it works. It sounds good, but there's just a lot of weird stuff in there. But yeah, there you go. So that's there. I hope that redeems some of my criticism on Black Sabbath. So
should we give his metal card back to him, ladies and gentlemen?
Oh, he never lost it. He never lost it.
I know. We're just giving you
the sad
Johnny Tin.
Okay,
Tony,
here's what I'm
going
to say about Hellguard here with Wasted Potential. If this had been called something else other than Celtic Frost, this might have done big business. But because they kept the Celtic Frost name on it, by the time they finally come to do this album, Vanity Nemesis, yeah, there was no way they were going to recover. They break up. They eventually come back and do one more album, but then Tom G. Warrior goes off and does a totally different thing. So now I'm being called Johnny Copper. Goodness gracious.
Oh my goodness. But Eric agrees with you. The album after this was a horrible album. This was indeed the cracking phase.
Yes.
There you go.
Oh, did you see?
But Eric, I will say though, I do actually like Cold Lake. Believe it or not, as crazy as an album as that sounds, I actually like Cold Lake. There's a lot of good grooves on there. Like I said, call it something else other than Celtic Frost. But as Celtic Frost, there's no way you can get to Circle of the Tyrants to Cherry Orchards. It's just not. It just doesn't seem the same. So.
Oh, did you see what Peter Jones posted?
Johnny may need some Rust-Oleum for his metal. I kid. Why? Because I love.
I'm afraid to give my pick.
Johnny Metal has his creed back. But
There you
Tony
go.
Johnny
Johnny
Copper.
Copter.
Oh my God, you are terrible, everyone out
Man,
there.
y'all are killing me today. God. I gotta go
Oh,
back to
Nathan. Oh, Nathan. Hold tight. The cracks were way before that, Nathan. Don't get me going. You know what happened. I'll get all worked up. Oh, we're talking with Ernesto because Ernesto was on fire. No, Ernesto, but last night you thought he was broke. Wait a minute. Cherry Orchards was horrible.
Yeah, just watch that video. It's just, oh.
Okay.
I mean, the video itself, it's not. It does actually have some pretty good riffs, though, but the lyrics are just terrible.
Ken, where have you been? I was holding
Ken.
up the show for you. I'm pretty sure. Okay. Ken, the Ken fan club. Marlon was here and then he disappeared. Probably couldn't handle us talking metal, probably. I don't know if it probably wasn't hard enough for him. Peter Chris from the start.
Oh, boy.
Ooh. Well. All right. Well, anyway, let's keep going. That's a good pick. It was a good kept things, I don't know.
It kept things something.
I've got one that Grant's going to hate. Oh, careful. Careful, Jeff.
Oh, boy.
Hey, Ken, I love you. You've turned me on to so much stuff that you've caused me to spend so much money. All right, let's go over to DC. What's your pick, DC?
Okay, I'll try and not be too wordy, but I got a
Well,
lot
whatever.
of prep
We're
here. My picks are going to be about some of the main reasons a group can lose its way. But for this first one, I'm going to talk about a situation where Grant and I see the cracks for a group that we love. It just comes at different albums for us. Grant contends that the cracks are showing for Queen with The Game.
Oh, here we go.
And
Yes.
I contend it was with the album Hot Space.
Okay, we might as well hit both of these at the same time. I'm sure Todd Evans will probably want to make a comment. This might break the show, but I understand what you're saying. We might as well talk about this together, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, let's get it all out there on the table.
Go
folks.
ahead. So,
All
Queen
right,
Hot
now.
Space, go ahead.
I can agree with Grant that The Game does show a bit of that not up to par vibe. But overall, I think it's a really good album. In fact, side one is stellar. You got Play the Game, Dragon Attack, another one Bites the Dust, Need Your Lovin' Tonight, and Crazy Little Thing Called Love is a solid side of Queen material. They're keeping the Queen identity, but adding some left field song choices, like with the rockability of Crazy Little Thing and the funk of another one Bites the Dust, which they've been toying around with that since the album Jazz. Now, side two does drop off a bit, but side one told me Queen was still capable of creating material that, although exploring different territory, was still top of their game. And I don't know if you wanted to jump in, Grant, or if you wanted me to go into the next album, which is my real source of
No, that's all
motivation.
you have to say about it?
About
So
the
you're
game.
saying that the cracks developed on Hot Space.
Well, there was just a little fissure. I don't really see a crack. I just see a very minute dropping off there. And you're right in that respect, because that is where it started to show. But my God, we got this next album, the atrocity called Hot Space. What a freaking train wreck. And there's nothing on this album that I even like until the last two songs. And if these two albums were toilets, the game would still be a functioning commode. You would just have to flush it twice. Hot Space would just back up, filling your bathroom with waste material. That's the way I see it. The first songs...
Okay, go ahead.
First song, Staying Power, has all the trappings of 80s pop music that I absolutely hate. It's that cheesy keys, mechanized drum beats and bass, blah. And more the same with the second song, Dancer. And I realize you have to move with the times, but you don't have to sell your soul. Pump the brakes a little bit. Third song, Hot Space, more the same. Where is my queen gone? There's not even any vaudeville on this album. But that song does have a great guitar solo, I will give it that. And then you get Body Language. And this song is for prancing, and I'm not much one for prancing. So it's just 4 stinkers right out of the chute. There is a song, Put Out the Fire, that reminds me of their song,
That's
It's
not
Late. Yeah, it reminds me of their song, It's Late, and that's okay. And then Cool Cat, which has got a great 70s soul dance vibe. And then, of course, Under Pressure. But those 2.5 songs cannot save this album for me. This album told me that the old Queen is dead and is not coming back. And you may get a song or 2 here and there, but they were moving in a different direction that didn't resonate with me. And no album they recorded after this one did much for me, really. There was a track here and there, but overall, they lost the plot with me with this album.
I have to say, Mr. Frickin' actually, Jazz bothered himself. By the way, I can't talk. I have to say that Jazz bothered me a bit. I'm trying to understand why. What do you mean?
I didn't count Flash Gordon because I don't consider that a Queen.
Oh, Jazz is wonderful.
Jazz
I
is
love
wonderful.
it too.
I mean, granted, let's face it, we all know why we bought the album Jazz, but I mean, it's still a great album.
I'm just
poster insert.
I'm going to put Todd Evans on the spot because I know he likes Hot Space. Hey, we're trying to keep it in. What's your thought on what DC said?
Well, I think that the situation with Queen is that it's very, very complicated, and there are a lot of peaks and a lot of valleys in their later career. And I don't disagree with Grant's assessment that the cracks started to develop on the game. I think that's a little harsh, but I don't disagree. But I think Hot Space is actually pretty good. I think way too much is made of the stylistic difference in those first 4 tracks. And I think Dancer is basically Billy Squier, The Stroke. And it's got a guitar orchestration guitar solo, which is very Queen. But I think a lot of times what happens with Queen is that people like to say, let Freddie's this character and let Freddie be Freddie, but occasionally sometimes people say things like they don't say it, but they might mean, oh, not like that. Oh, tone down the Freddie. And I think if you're gonna let Freddie be Freddie, you gotta let him go all out and that's what he was into then. And so I just think too much is made of it.
George, you might have a point. George says Jazz was the last full band album before Freddie took over and turned it into the Freddie Mercury show. And I do believe that there is some truth to that because, what I liked about those early records and even The Game, it still has, you still get Brian May to sing a vocal. You've got Roger singing a vocal. I liked when everybody did their own songs. They all kind of became homogenized and they kind of lost their individuality to some degree. But I missed, because after The Game, no one sang anything anymore. It was all Freddie. And I love Freddie, don't get me wrong, but I love everybody else in the band too. And I like how they were all individuals coming together, for a record. The thing with The Game, let me bring up the graphic. Well, I might as well talk about The Game because I'm going to start getting the game going.
Now.
I might as well get it going now. When this album came out, my friends and I were big Queen fans. Queen could not do anything wrong. I think I heard Queen, it must have been 70 when I was like 10 or 11, and I loved them. We got everything. 1980 rolls around, and I remember going to the store. My buddy bought The Game. We were all waiting for it to come out. This is back in the day. It's not like anything really leaked out.
Yep.
You got in Rolling Stone. You might have read a review. You knew it was coming out. This is back in the day, ladies and gentlemen, when it was an event for a record to come out. And Queen, The Game was an event because we liked it. We put this record on. Yeah, Play the Game's pretty good, but I already could tell when that came on that something was missing. For one, I felt like Play the Game is Queen. I've said this before. I don't think the whole album's like this, but I think Play the Game, great song, but it sounds like Queen trying to be Queen. And it's not flowing out of them so easily like it had before. Dragon Attack, I look at that differently. That, we got total full tilt Brian May at the helm, I think. Yep. That I don't see it. But also, this is where I thought that the songwriting was starting to fall apart. Don't Try Suicide is a shitty song. I'm sure I love what they're trying to say, but really, I would have rather had the Roger Taylor flip side on this record for the single than have that on here. But it just sounds a lot forced to me. Plus, we've got synthesizers on it. I'm not anti-synth, but this is a band that we used to promote. We're not doing any synths.
They always used to put it on their album. No synthesizers were used.
And plus, we went over to Mac. Now, I don't mind Mac's work with ELO. I think it's great, but I don't mind his work with Billy Squier. But there's something about Mac, and they love using Mac. I didn't care for what Mac brought. This is just too clean, too commercial, not as experimental as they were. It's like Queen is putting out a record just to try to get a hit. And it's not them trying to be look at those older records. I don't listen to any of those thinking that they're out to try. They're just trying to be creative, make the best record they can. And this just seems like they're selling out to me to some degree. Now, but literally, when I was 15, we're all looking at each other like, oh my God, this is terrible. Now, I'm a kid. I'm not a music connoisseur. I'm a Queen fan. And yeah, it's a good record. But this is where, for me, the cracks started to form. I can never get past it. It changed my life when I was a kid, and I went, my God, what happened? I wanted another jazz. I thought jazz was brilliant, and this let me down. Yeah, another one bites the dust is fine. If you want a disco song, that's great.
Yeah, I think that they trying to adapt to the times and throwing a couple songs in there of that variety. Yeah, you got to do that as a band because
I get it, but to me, that's where it changed. Now, Hot Space. Let me bring up Hot Space. I would have to say, well, I've said this before on the channel. This, to me, is the last true Queen album. Because for one, I look at it like this. Queen sounds like Queen. Queen on here doesn't, because they've totally changed their style. But it doesn't sound forced. This album doesn't sound forced to me. It sounds like them doing what they want to do. Yeah, we know the whole story. Roger Taylor, Brian May, weren't into it. The whole rock and roll side's on side 2. I don't think that the songs are all that great compared to what came before. Look at everything jazz prior. Show me something weak on those records. I'm going to wait in the chat. Throw me something weak. Throw me something weak. The Game is badass straight who I don't like. Well, yeah, but it's Queen trying to sound like everybody else. It's Queen trying to sound like Elvis. Queen trying to, maybe you get bored doing the same old thing, and I am on a rant like you wouldn't believe.
These guys in these bands, people got to remember that you're the listener, but they're in the band, and they're living with these songs, and when they go on tour, night after night after night after night, they get bored. They want to do different stuff, but then try and stay true to their fan base, and that's a difficult balance. Unless you're AC/DC, then you can do the same thing for 30, 40 years.
Look, Grant, you're talking about the Black Album by Metallica. Well, they're kind of going like hand in hand. Wait a minute.
Hey, Grant, I got a song. I got
look,
a song.
For all of its flaws, the Game's a good album. I like the Game a lot more now than when I did when I was 15. I will say that.
Yeah, maybe you need to let that go.
Why?
It was a long time ago, and you were a kid.
But it made. I like it better, but all I'm trying to say is that's where it started to lose it. and they never recovered. Hot Space, you might as well bury them in a grave because, for one, after that they never toured the States again, and all their records didn't sell. Yeah, they were big in the UK, but they weren't crap here anymore. They kind of dug their grave. Anyway, Go ahead, Todd.
I was going to say, we were talking about body language a few minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a song on News of the World called Get Down, Make Love.
Yeah, it's great.
Which is it's good, but it's kind of like body language. I mean, it's that same kind of weirdness happening. So it's not like there was no precedent for body language, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I didn't say body language is bad. I don't think body language sounds forced. I think some of the game sounds forced to me. Like I said, I think this is the last Queen album where they were doing what they wanted. Like I said, Brian May and Roger Taylor probably weren't into it, but it doesn't sound like a forced record to me at all. And I think the more you listen to Hot Space, I don't really mind it. I don't go back to it very often.
Roger got 2 songs on Hot Space, and I think they're both good songs, and nobody ever talks about them.
I would agree that it doesn't sound forced, but it does sound like a Freddie-centric album, and it does not work with me. The instrumentation with the 80s embellishments. I mean,
I can't be fired, Logan.
He can't be fired, Logan. He's the man. He's running the show.
Anyway, go ahead, DC. Sorry.
Oh, I've said pretty much all. That for me, this is where I got off the Queen bandwagon, and I was with this band back in '73 as far as being a fan. My girlfriend at the time, her older brother, had the first album. We looked at this thing. What the hell is this Queen with this guy holding a baton over his head, bright pink? Put that needle on the vinyl, and I was a fan. Right that second. Loved it. All the way through the game. But then with this, the old DC dropped off and I never jumped back on again. Just nothing that they released after this. There's a song or two, but done with them.
Yeah, I jumped on with the game. I didn't even buy it. And I didn't listen to it for years because I was just hurt. Took it personally.
I love the cover. The cover artwork for a kind of.
I'm letting it go. Beautiful. I'm just saying. But when you're a kid, man, things make an impression.
Things
That's what
hit
I'm trying to say.
And they hit you hard.
Hit you hard. Kind of magic. Oh, George.
Love that album cover art, but that's it.
Kind of magic is like this. It's great and not great, and it just kind of goes back and forth. But when it's great, it's great. And I feel the same way about The Miracle. I think The Miracle has some fantastic songs on it.
Well, we looked at those records, and you rated that pretty high.
I rated it pretty high.
Yep. Oh, here we go. T-Rex. T-Rex, I need to give you a wrench, but I can't get over to the live stream to give you one, but I will later. Kind of Magic Best 80s Queen Album. Logan's really worried about my health. Logan, I'll take my pills later. Damn, Grant is passionate. Well, you get me talking about the game, I get worked up. All right, so here we go. Sea Tranquility calls them Peaks and Valleys albums spikes.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
Wait a minute. Now answer the question, who paid them $1 billion makes no sense for their catalog. Yeah, that's crazy. Wasn't the Queen catalog the most spent on an artist catalog to date? I think so.
Yes.
Isn't that incredible? Well, I mean, good for them. I mean, I think it's great. George, I guess I love A Kind of Magic. It doubles as a soundtrack album to the first Highlander movie. Yeah. There's stuff on there I like. One Vision. I like One Vision. Pretenders Learning to Crawl. Ooh. Well, that could be another. That would be
After Learning to Crawl.
After Learning to Crawl, I think. Yeah. Anyway, so there you go. We spent enough time on Damn Queen. Well, I got my we talked 2 at 1. It's kind of like a bonus.
We doubled up.
On it. All right, let's throw it over to Calm down, Grant. Calm down. All right, John the Music Now. What's your first pick?
Well, it's very nice to see all of you today, and thank you for joining us in the chat.
There you go.
All right. So I'm going in a totally different genre here.
Probably a good idea.
Probably. This trio, sometimes quartet, all fantastic songwriters. They made their name in previous bands before they got together. You know where I'm going already if you know a lot about music. They didn't release a lot of albums. They were very sporadic with the albums they put out together. Their first album, self-titled debut, is a classic top to bottom. The next album they made with the fourth member was nearly as good. It hit #1 on the Billboard charts. 6 years later, the original trio got back together, made an album that went to #2. Fleetwood Mac's Rumors killed everything in 1977.
Yeah.
And then Crosby, Stills, and Nash made Daylight again in 1982. Now, this is a very good album. It's also the last album, in my humble opinion, you could call very good. Because after this, their albums are very hit and miss. They were good songs, but not good albums. Why? Because from this point, it's Crosby, Stills, and Nash pretty much a name only. Because Crosby was having so many substance issues, he was barely on the album. So most of these harmonies, it's not Crosby, Stills, and Nash. It's Stills, Nash, Mike Finnegan, and Timothy B. Schmidt, who I may be discussing later on or on a future episode. So you're probably thinking, well, Wasted on a Wave was a big hit. Southern Cross was a big hit. Delta's a great song. This was David Crosby's contribution to the album. Yes, there's a lot of good songs on here, but I think the first 3 albums, I think have endured much better. The production here is kind of 80s. It's more of Stills had to really pick up the slack here. And it plays a lot more like a Stills or electric. He's got a lot more songs on here. But like I said, it's Stills and Nash doing the heavy lifting. But the problem is it's not Crosby, Stills, and Nash doing those beautiful harmonies anymore that you heard from those first 3 albums. It's still very good. But the cracks were showing because some of these songs are like Might As Well Have a Good Time, You Are Alive, Too Much Love to Hide. They're good. They're not great. Like I'd give this an 8, or I'd give the other albums 9s and 10s. And I don't think they ever came back from this. What happened was they got back together with Neil Young, which they did Deja Vu with Neil Young, and they did American Dream, and that album was really hyped. And it didn't do very well, and for a good reason, because by that point, Neil Young is saving all of his great songs for himself. You still had Crosby was still dealing with some substance issues. Well, he was just getting past them at that point, but he didn't have too many songs on that album. And the production wasn't that hot, and the songs there were some good ones, but they weren't all bangers anymore. And then from there, they made a few more albums. But would you call them good? Not in my opinion. I think they're decent, but they're not as good as what they could do. They hit it out of the park with those first 3, and a lot of people just say the first 2. And this is like an 8, like I said, but this is where the cracks started to show. So that's my first choice. Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Daylight again.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I can't argue. Panel, what do you think? If you know this record.
I don't know it very well.
I can't elaborate because I'm kind of like a sideline CS and fan. I don't have really any of their albums post Deja Vu.
That's good. Last decent. Yeah, I would say because everything else is just either a money grab or they got together half-heartedly, put a record. When Neil Young came back, that record's... It's just them getting a paycheck as far as I'm concerned. Where's that passion? Where's that great songwriting that appeared on that first album? And I'm going to include Deja Vu as a brilliant album. Back in the day, Rolling Stone hated those records. They hated them, but my God, are they great. I never understood why they hated that stuff. Of course, Rolling Stone hated everything.
Rolling Stone.
If it wasn't Bob Dylan or
That's a whole other 10 shows.
That's a whole other show.
Yeah, really.
But there you go. Daylight again has some excellent songs.
It does some excellent songs, but before it, there were excellent albums, and now just a lot of great songs. But I don't think it's not all bangers. You know, it's not a knockout.
Yeah, there you go. Decent album. Can't argue with that pick. Southern Cross is a good song, but it feels more like well, there's no Crosby on this album, barely. It's a Nash Stills album, pretty much, if you really want to call it that. I don't know. Wasted on the Way, it's a good song, I will give you that. And it was a big hit. But does it really hit that magic point of Crosby, Stills, and Nash? It doesn't, but it's a good song. It's a good 80s song. I agree 100% this is probably the last decent thing because everything else is pretty much trash. God, and it just tears me up for such great musicians. You know, the pedigree with CSN and CSNY. Just the fact that they could produce this slop later. I mean, I'm sure there's some stuff that's on there that it's decent, but this is probably where, if you're really a smart person, this is where you probably should stop.
They should have had many more good years than they did.
Thanks, BC. I like that. I need to give you a wrench too.
Yeah, that's the thing about bands or artists in general. There are lives and things going on in lives that intertwine with the creative process, and you can go off into ditches. You can reach magnificence. It's hard to keep it all at that 9-10 level.
D. Rocker mentions Aerosmith 9 Lives. Now, I have to talk about this just real quick. We looked at all these Aerosmith albums on Ryan Gavalier's channel back when we were first started doing shows.
Boy, talking about long shows.
It was 3 hours long. It took us a year to go through the catalog. We would have 3 hours to talk about. Now I'm cutting these shows off, but we might do another round. But I'm going to take a vote from everybody in the panel, and we might go around one more if we can do it.
Jeff Alverson says you guys are not going to get through 3 examples each.
I knew we wouldn't because it's such a great topic.
Yeah, we'll turn this into the Jerry Lewis telethon here if we go 3 rounds.
Yeah, we couldn't. But this will give us a show for September. So we got plenty of picks. In fact, this could be a series because a lot of these bands we could talk about.
We could spend a lot of time on.
We could spend a lot of time on because we're passionate about it. But anyway, I wanted to talk about 9 Lives real quick. But to be honest, I'm not sure what the hate is with 9 Lives. I actually think it's a pretty good record. And D. Rocky, you're saying that the Cracks just started it with 9 Lives?
Oh, they were Cracks long before that. They were able to mend them a little bit, but then it just kind of came at the seams of
bad patchwork.
Yeah. People like to shit on that Geffen era, but like I've said before, you have to hand it to Aerosmith, reinventing themselves, making themselves, you would have thought the way they were going, you would never hear from them again. After Night in the Ruts and you know what I'm talking about, that whole era, Rock in a Hard Place, you thought that they were
Mirrors.
Done with Mirrors. For them to come back and reinvent themselves and be probably more successful than they ever were, you've got to give them props. Whether you like that material or not, you have to hand it to them. Not many artists can do that, and I'm impressed by that. I'm just saying. I'll leave it at that. All right. Now finally we're to Todd. Oh my God. Jeez, I forgot what we were doing. Todd Evans, what's your pick? Oh, all right, well, get ready, everybody. This might be
I'm going to change things up a little bit, even some more, and I'm going to start talking about the band Chicago.
Oh God, here we go.
This is controversial because people think that this problem happened before this period, before this album, but I'm going to say it starts here. And, a lot of people will say that it started before that with Hot Streets and 13 and 14, I think is way underrated. But all of those albums, when they were still on Columbia, had something in common, and that's that they still felt like Chicago albums. They still felt like Chicago was a family. And you had a Danny Seraphine song and a James Pankow song, a couple of Robert Lamb songs, and 3 or 4 Peter Cetera songs, and you felt like everybody's contributing, and some albums are better than others, but at least they sound like they sound. Danny's drums sound like Danny's drums, all that kind of stuff. You get to Chicago 16, and some people are probably saying at this point, why would you pick the song that has a #1 single on it as the part where the cracks start to show? And it's because you've got outside writers, you've got Peter Cetera writing a couple of really good songs and a lot of really good production on those couple of songs. But then you've got other songs that are filler and throwaways written by other people, and Martin Popoff's favorite band. I just saw that in the comments.
What? Yeah, we should have brought Martin on here.
But
could you imagine Martin on this show?
Martin and Marlin.
Yeah. And Marlin.
Chicago.
Anyway, Go ahead. Sorry, Todd. Go ahead.
So you got a couple of things happening here. You've got Robert Lamb, who was, at the beginning of this band, he was considered to be the leader of the group, and you got him pretty much checked out. He's having drug problems. He contributes an instrumental that's just one part of one song, and doesn't sing at all. Nobody sings but Peter, except for Bill Champlin. But you've got everybody. You just got David Foster just deciding that he's going to dismiss the rhythm section, and that's not. I don't know about you, but that sounds like when you have a rhythm section that's Peter Cetera and Danny Seraphine. I don't think that's a rhythm section that you should just dismiss. I don't have that big of a problem with this album being ballad centric. That's not my issue with it. I think that was that Chicago had been going in that direction for quite a while. But I think that the lack of it sounding like they did it themselves is where it goes south. And I don't think Chicago ever recovered. I think the album after the 17 is better than 16, but it's still got a lot of the same issues. And then after, I just think it's over for them at this point.
I think Peter Jones is having an aneurysm.
I'm surprised Peter Jones doesn't agree with me.
I'm surprised he doesn't either. I don't know what is happening.
I guess I misunderstand Peter Jones's issues with Chicago, but I think it's Chicago 16. And if you want to talk about being disappointed as a kid, man, I was crushed.
Todd
Absolutely
loves his
crushed.
pop, according to Marlon. But that's really not what we're talking. That's not what we're talking here, though. Right.
Yeah, I like the band to sound like the band. I want to hear Peter Cetera playing bass. I want to hear Danny Seraphine playing drums. And, I didn't.
It's kind of like me with Queen. I want to hear everybody sing. I want to hear Brian May take a vocal. I want to hear Roger Taylor do a vocal. I like them as a group, and everybody's got a place instead of becoming the Freddie Mercury show.
I get exactly where Todd's coming from, although I draw my line differently, as we may or may not hear later on tonight.
Well, we're going to switch up the order now,
there are a
gentlemen,
lot
because
of places with Chicago where you can draw that line.
Yeah,
So
true.
because I want to keep this
there are a lot of
discussion.
places.
I want to keep the discussion going. So hold on, BM. Hold on, Johnny Metal. DC, I want to turn it over to you for your pick.
Okay, and this is why this conversation is so interesting, because we can pick the same bands, but where we draw that line, we're hearing it different, and I just find that utterly fascinating. But I guess I'm going to go with the loss of a key member as where I think Chicago kind of lost their way, and that started with Hot Streets, the first album of new material after the passing of guitarist Terry Kath. And for me, their confusion shows on that album cover. They don't know where the hell they're going and what is going on with Cetera carrying the drummer like that. At least do it piggyback style. But while this is not a bad album, you could see Chicago is going for more of a pure pop approach going forward. Again, not a bad album. but what Chicago was died with Kath. And he was not only an outstanding guitarist, but he was also one of the architects of that Chicago blend of jazz, rock, and pop flourishes. And he even sung that ballad, Color My World, too. So he was much more than just their guitarist.
You're right.
There weren't going to be these elaborate, drawn-out experimental pieces anymore. Again, that's not necessarily bad. I like a lot of this, but it isn't Chicago as I'd known it. It's pop and balladry that ruled supreme and almost exclusively from here on end. So this is where a pick where the cracks are showing, but they are musical transition cracks. But unlike Queen, I was on board with a lot of this going forward. And I actually really, really like the album Chicago 14. It's got a lot of great songs on it. So I'll
That's
end
right.
it
We've
there.
got Todd's got it handy.
Or thumbprint.
I
is
always
the-
have it handy.
I have
Is it
that
14,
out.
the one with kind of like the embossed lettering of Chicago with like a purple shadow underneath, or was that 17?
No, that's
I gotta get
17.
my albums. 17
This
is like
This is 14.
no, that's not the one. 17.
That's
then.
not the
So
one? Okay.
The album after the
After
one that
16.
Todd mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that album.
Well,
So
yeah, one
that's all
thing-
I've got to say.
One thing that I've always thought is interesting that when people talk about Chicago and they talk about Terry Kath, not talking about UDC, but like one of the things that I think gets missed is that there was one guy in that middle Chicago period, mid 70s to late 70s, that was bringing a ballad to every album, and that one guy was Terry Kath. It was not Peter Cetera until you get to If You Leave Me Now. The guy that brought the ballad was Terry. And I always find that
Shocking
kind of interesting.
because he was a big grizzly bear of a man, and you would not think he would bring the balladry, but as Todd said, he absolutely did. So that's a great point as well. And like I say, Kath was more than just an outstanding guitarist. He was one of the architects of that band in many ways.
I don't disagree that I think that's a pretty good take to say that it starts with Hot Streets. I just happen to have kind of a soft spot for Hot Streets 13 and 14 because it was when I was in high school and when I was.
Oh well, Todd, you need to let that go.
No.
And yeah, I know. And you know, I lost my train of thought. Go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, when these albums hit you, at what point in your life, they can like resonate much stronger than, because I'm older than all of you cats, so that some of these albums that hit you in your prime years when you're developing your sensibilities about music, I was already further on down the line. There's that age group like 12 to 22 or so where it's so much of a part of your DNA as a music lover. So those albums and those times really resonate with if you're a hardcore music lover. So I get that.
All right.
Yeah, and I think too, when you're talking about Chicago, you're talking about what happens from Hot Streets on. There's a death involved, so it's kind of like, do they stop or do they try to figure out a way to keep going? And
oh
so
my God! Can you even imagine the turmoil in that band?
Yeah.
Just trying to go forward.
Sure, it was
Tip my
really
hat
rough.
to
Yeah.
'em.
Yeah, but I don't think DC's wrong about this.
It's just
Okay.
very interesting how we all see things different. It's
Yeah.
Okay. We got 72 people watching. I want to ask everyone if you can give me a thumbs up. YouTube likes that. They like it. We're trying to build the warehouse. We're trying to make the warehouse a place where people can hang and talk about music, and it's all good fun. So if you can give a thumbs up, please do. If you haven't subscribed, please do, and please leave a comment. Now, I know we've went to the hour part, and we've only went around once. Now, I'm going to throw it out to the panel. Do we want to go one more time? In people in the I don't know how people's time is. I think
Do you have a hard stop at 9, Grant, or
No.
can you keep going?
I think Sea of Tranquility probably fire up around 10, so I think we're okay. But Oh, Megan, how are you?
Well, we got 5 more choices because I'm done.
Well,
with my
let's just go.
second pick.
Let's just go around once. What people in the chat? One more time. One more time, guys.
That's
I
what
mean,
she
we'll do it.
said.
If you don't, we can shut it down if you guys don't want it. What are you good, Marlon? You're good with what?
with one more
going-
round.
One more round. We haven't mentioned Crack the Sky. Let's go for it. Oh, Ken has spoken.
Okay.
One more time before we go. All right. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. This is a long show, but it's a great show. These are the type of conversations I love. I love this. All right. So, well, see, we're not doing too bad because we've already took care of DC. Let's go over to BM, get his picks, and we'll just keep going. We'll go around one more time. So
I think we'll be fine
thanks,
if we quit talking about Queen. That's the problem.
Hey, Chicago too.
That's where we
Yeah,
got held
Chicago
up.
got out of the way.
All right.
Oh, Marlon was good for one. So that means Marlon's good. So we can go. Because always when Marlon says something, it's like opposite
The
day.
contrary.
It's like SpongeBob when they did opposite day. So that's the way it is.
Keep going and keep arguing. There you go.
We're not arguing. We're just talking music. All right, BM, go.
All right, I'm going to talk about a band that I really liked a lot in the early 80s. They had 2 albums in the 70s that were okay. Then they shortened their name. You guys probably know where I'm going with this at this point. They did 4 albums in the early 80s, which I thought were just great. There might have been 1 or 2 songs on each album that weren't quite as good, but overall the albums were real strong. This was their last, I thought, really, really good album. Okay. There was maybe 1 or 2 on here I could take or leave, but it was a really strong album. So then they come out with this one. And I'm going to be honest, there's some really good stuff on here. But I'd say half of it's just kind of filler or just – I felt like they were trying too hard to get the teenagers, and then they were starting to change their image a little bit. Like I said, half of it's great. The other half I could take or leave. They were really changing though so this one came out after that. I don't know. I want to say this is where the crack started. Okay. And then it continued on this Contagious album. They fully were starting to embrace, I think, kind of the hair band look, and some of the songs on here are similar, just real filler, teenage type stuff. There's still 4 or 5 really good songs on here, though. And, they dumped the drummer as well, Leonard Hayes, because he didn't have the right look, from what I heard, because he was an incredible drummer.
He was.
But, the next album, 10, I thought was a slight improvement over those previous 2. And then I think, was it Musically Incorrect and another one? They weren't too bad, but they just never, ever bounced back, I thought, from the In Rock We Trust album. It just was never the same again. So that's what I got, Y&T.
You know what? The first thing I think of when I look at this album, if you've got a great logo, don't ever stop using it.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Exactly.
Great.
What
just-
they crap the
yeah.
bed. What?
Yeah, you see that and you go, oh, you got negativity going right into it as soon as you see it.
They
Yeah.
did put it on the back, but
What? That's even
Yeah,
more
that's not good
outrageous. That's more
Yeah.
outrageous because that cover image is inspired. I like that. They should have
That's
just
right.
run flush with that illustration, ran their
Yeah.
usual logo, not that blocky black crap. Fail.
It's like a sports jersey or something.
Oh
like
my
that.
God.
I don't know what they were
Fail.
going for there.
Fail.
Down for the Count sounds like a name for a TV show with the Count from Sesame Street.
Down for the count.
You know, when I see that cover,
Woo.
I always did think of the Count from Sesame Street for some reason. That's weird.
I always thought the moment afterward would be really funny when his fangs got busted.
Oh, here we go. Never heard of Y&T. What album of theirs should I check out?
You can go Earthshaker, through In Rock We Trust.
Right.
Those four are four of the
Black
best
Tiger,
hard rock
and,
albums of the
Mean Streak.
80s. Right there.
Yep. 81 through 84. Get those out.
Absolutely.
Those
All
four.
right, there you go.
Solid.
There's
Can't
the
go
best
wrong
of
with those.
81 to 85 collection. If you want to just hear the best of 81 to 85, that's a CD that's out by them as well.
And Rob, John's a good person to pay attention to with that one because he did the series with Tim Derling. He was also in a Y&T book that Tim Derling put out.
There
so
you go.
He's a good authority on that one.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. See? Grant's Rock Warehouse, where people are helping people. That's
right.
what we're about.
And my opinion,
It's about the love. It's about the love, folks.
And,
All right.
in my opinion, yes, what happened with Down for the Count, yes, big cracks there. My least favorite album. I thought they came back critically, musically. I love the 90s albums. But did they ever they never came back commercially because they were on the cusp and A&M ruined them. A&M ruined them because they rushed the band back in the studio and they didn't have enough time to write a great album. And they were tired from the road, and they put out the Open Fire live album a few months before. Now,
We're talking REO Speedwagon, Good Trouble.
Yes.
Same deal. Epic wanted REO back in there, and they were tired because the High Fidelity tour was a long tour.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a couple of covers on that album too, which I don't know if I should.
That happens so much with the Suits. They think creative people can just crap out. They can crap out okay stuff always, but if you wait and you will get a much better product. But that don't equate in their world. They don't understand that. They just think, you could play the guitar, you could sing, write us some hit songs. No, it don't happen that way, folks.
Here we go.
Yeah, and I'm speculating here, but I don't think that A&M had any other metal bands. I think A&M was really impatient to break Y&T, and I think that they botched it. And I don't know why they botched it, but they did.
I think they had Triumph too.
MCA.
That's MCA.
I'm sorry. Okay, another band that dropped.
They
the
went
ball
from RCA to MCA.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, not bad. But yeah, you're right. I mean, with pop bands, they did a great job with marketing them, but I don't think they could do it with hard rock bands.
I don't think they had any other ones.
Peaks and valleys.
Could be probably wrong. So
names are
correct me if I'm
escaping me
wrong.
right now. Yeah.
Here we go. Isn't that just it? The major labels of the day didn't give the artists who were hardworking and created the support they needed. Well, don't forget, a lot of this was carryover. Probably a lot of these guys from the 60s when you put out 3 albums a year. Before, albums were like a artistic statement. You know, it used to be just a collection of songs. People didn't really care about that stuff. You know, Beach Boys were cranking stuff. The Beatles kind of changed all that. They started to use the studio as a tool, and once the Beatles started doing it, it caught on. But, you know, it's hard to crank stuff out when you're really trying to make a statement or trying to make some art. You know what I mean? And some of these bands, we're talking the 70s too. Well, this is 80s. All right, 70s and 80s. A lot of these bands, you know, this is when rock and roll, you know, big tours, a lot more elaborate. People were looking forward to these records. It was a moment. And, you know, I don't know. We've lost all that. I feel like, Grant, get over it. Oh, they had Extreme.
They had Extreme too, but that was kind of later.
Later, yeah.
I was going to say
Keel?
90s.
89.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about Keel.
Well, the Elder's right. Kiss was cranking out 2 albums a year like in the 70s, and that's what they did. But the albums were only like 25 minutes long, too, so that helps. The CD ruined that. Everybody thought you had to fill out the CD.
Status Quo was on A&M, at least in the early part of the 70s. I don't know how long they were on there.
They bounced around a couple labels, didn't they?
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I know like the early, like the Pile Driver album. I know that's A&M, but after that, I'm a little dicey on. But
Well, yeah. Good Trouble has many decent tracks, but nothing like those big hits from High Infidelity, and nothing as sappy as Can't Fight That Feeling. The thing with Good Trouble, it sounds just like High Infidelity. Same, Mike, who, I forget the producer, Beamish, Kevin Beamish is a producer. It sounds exactly like it, but it sounds a little bit rushed. It doesn't sound fully fleshed out. I don't know. Yeah, I don't have a problem with Good Trouble. I like Good Trouble.
I like Good Trouble, but I
Yeah.
agree that it sounds like they needed a little more
Yeah.
time.
It wasn't a vet. It was. We've lost that. That's when video games took over. Kids don't care about rock and roll and music anymore.
Nope. And you made a good point, Grant, in that at your age you and your buddies loved Queen, and there were maybe one guy in the group could afford to get that Queen album right when it was released. But you were all there over at his bedroom or living room to listen to that album when he brought it home. It was a different time.
Different time. But we all, other than my friend Ken, but he liked that commercial thing. But he's the one who bought it. But John and my buddy John and I, we're rock and rollers. We were looking at it going, what happened? Where's Queen? Where'd they go? We were disappointed. All right. Y&T, good pick. Great discussion, everybody. Oh, love it. BM Bolt. It always comes back to Queen. It always comes back to Cheap Trick too, but we haven't went down that road. Okay. Not yet. Johnny Metal, what's your next pick?
Okay, so I'm going to stay in the metal department, but now I'm going to go toward the other side of my first pick. So this little band, again, from the LA Strip, had a really good album in 85. Has the band on a tank, and they got some machine guns going on. It's a great album. But then their second album, which is this little baby,
Yeah.
Stryper to Hell with the Devil. Now,
There it is.
you're probably thinking, well, that was a really popular album. Why are you saying the Cracks were formed? Well, for one, okay, so Tim Gaines here, he's not on it. He's not playing bass on it. Some studio guy. They get a studio guy because they feel like, well, they're having some interpersonal issues here. It's not working as a band. So they get Tim out of that, and they get someone else to play the bass for that. Also plays bass on In God We Trust, a much more polished album because To Hell with the Devil winds up doing so well that, the excesses starts coming in now. Now they can afford the super polished album, which they get out of this one. And I don't have a physical copy of it, but then the next album, they go Against the Law, which was they just go back to more of a traditional metal sound, but then they also ditched the thing that kind of got them noticed, which was basically they were a Christian metal band. And well, they decided to kind of ditch that, and they just kind of go with a straight ahead image. But yeah, the Cracks were starting in To Hell with the Devil because there was a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on. And then of course, it just becomes a Michael Sweet show, which basically that's what it is, because he basically writes all the songs. And then, after Against the Law, they break up. Eventually, about 10 years later, they get back together. They do come out and there you go, Trucker. They do eventually come back together. Of course, Tim Gaines isn't in the band as bass. He doesn't come back till about 2010 or so. Still a lot of issues with him. And well, he eventually leaves the band. I'll tell you what, though, those last few Stryper albums have been absolutely amazing. Whether you want to listen to them because they're Christian or not, doesn't matter. Those albums are very, very heavy. They're strong albums. They're great playing on them, great production. And Michael Sweet's just been doing a great job. But in the early days, as great as this album is, there were definitely a lot of things going on in the band that were starting to crack things down. So there you go. That's my second pick.
I have to give those guys a little bit of an overview because, to be honest, the only thing I've ever heard from Stryper was they did a cover of "Shining Star" by Earth, Wind, and Fire. That's damn good.
Yeah.
Love it. So I need to check them out a little more.
And here's the fun. Okay, so I mentioned Tim Gaines. He's on the Against the Law album, but he's not on that song. Who do they get to play on the bass on that song? Randy Jackson.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Okay, I get that.
So there you go, dog.
There you go. Man.
Tony says you're trying to get your points back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're getting better, Johnny.
And
Johnny Metal will always be Johnny Metal in my book.
Marlon, you are correct. Yes, a lot of the problems were Tim Gaines. I will admit that. Yes.
T-Rex says we need a Stryper and Slayer tour to happen ASAP. Can you imagine?
They were supposed to play a gig together once, but Elder of Rock, I like Deliverance as well. That's a very good band too.
Let's see. I had one Stryper album back in the 80s. I think it followed Enigma. It was a Yellow and Black. It was Yellow and Black Attack.
Yeah, Yellow and Black Attack. That was their debut EP.
What's wrong with Christian rock? I love it. Well, there's nothing wrong
I do.
with it. There's nothing wrong with it.
I do too, Ken. I do too.
Pray for Rain. Pray for Rain is a good Christian rock band. They're not metal, but they're like Beatle-esque in a way. So if you like the Beatles, check out Pray for Rain.
Peter Jones, I love all the albums through Against the Law, so whatever cracks may have been, there aren't impacting my enjoyment of them. There you go. Johnny Metal Light.
Oh my God! What did you do to Tony? Man?
My goodness,
man,
it's a tough crowd.
Sheesh!
Wow. Stryper and Slayer. Could you imagine that Stryper? There has to be a great the Heaven and Hell. I don't know.
Yeah,
probably already have. But what else would you call the tour? It'd be great.
Exactly.
I have actually seen a picture of Kerry King and Robert Sweet in the same picture. I have actually seen that once.
Look at Schnee making an appearance.
Daniel
you never
Amos.
see Schnee over here.
Oh, Daniel Amos.
He left a comment earlier on, and it scrolled by before I could call it out. But he did comment before.
Yeah.
That's true, Rick. Tom Scholz did join Stryper for a remake of Peace of Mind because Michael Sweet was in Boston for a short time after Brad Delp's passing. But yeah, I mean this is really cool. PFR and Daniel Amos and Deliverance.
The Elder. Christian rockers are not like regular rock bands with their fancy shoes.
Yeah, so take that. And Kevin says he likes PFR, Pray for Rain.
Yeah.
I agree, sir.
Schnee's popular over here, though. My favorite Christian band is Morbid Angel.
Oh, jeez.
Attaboy, Ernesto.
Attaboy.
Wow.
All right, cool. Awesome. Stryper. All right.
Here we go. You get it all here, folks.
Oh, here we go. Boston's Third Stage was cracking.
Oh, I think that was before that, too.
Well, I'm just going to be quiet. Venom and Stryper may have played festivals together. I don't know.
Possible.
Here we go. I'm always here. I just never comment when Grant is here. Makes sense. Thanks for the support, Schnee.
At least he likes Johnny Metal.
Yeah. Yeah. Did Johnny Metal earn his stripes back? All right, cool.
Let me know if I'm healed.
We already did DC's pick because I did a tag team. Let's throw it over to John the Music Nut and get his pick.
All right. Eric Robertson. Mad props. Because I didn't think anyone would mention my next pick in the comments. Blackfoot, Siogo, from 1983. So, if you don't have any Blackfoot original album series will give you The Rise and The Fall.
Yay!
It will give you the 3 great albums, the albums where the cracks started to form in Siogo, and Vertical Smiles, which is nearly as bad as its cover. And less than $20 on eBay today. I'm not joking.
Yeah, you have to go wrong.
Well, that original album series, some of them are astronomical.
Because they only made too many.
Black Oak, Arkansas is not cheap. But some of them, like that, it's a really good deal to get all of them. And the mastering on all those, they traditionally follow like the original masterings from back in the day, which is fine with me, ladies and gentlemen. And so they're a good buy and they sound decent. You know, if you can get them that way, get them. Yeah. So anyway, go ahead, Johnny.
So, why did the cracks start to fall here? Well, the first 3 albums, Strikes, and I always get the order, Tomcat and Marauder. I always get those 2 mixed up, but they're both great. They're all great, heavy Southern rock albums. Want to hear a Southern rock album band that sounds close to metal back in the late 70s, early 80s? It was Blackfoot. And those albums still sound great today. Siogo, they try to get more contemporary. They add Ken Hensley from Uriah Heep on this album.
Why?
I don't know. Because
I don't know why.
Here's the thing. Some of the songs, he's adding his trademark organ. And those are okay. But, it doesn't quite sound like Blackfoot. And then sometimes he's adding synthesizers. And then it doesn't work at all. And you're exactly right, George Matthee. So this album, they're sounding more like Foreigner. And I don't like Foreigner in my Blackfoot.
Fair enough.
Understood.
You got some songs that still sound like the early Blackfoot, like Run for Cover, White Man's Land, Hearts Grown Cold, which is a Nazareth cover. Sail Away. Here's another mention to some of our friends in the chat. If you listen to the chorus to Sail Away, it sounds a lot like Back on the Road Again by REO Speedwagon. I kid you not. But yes, I mean, this was a noticeable drop off. It's probably a 7 out of 10, where the other ones would be 9s, 9.5. But they're trying to get more contemporary here. I think what was happening is they were right on the cusp of getting a hit again. Like they had Highway Song, which is their Freebird. And they had Train, later covered by Warrant. But they never quite got that brass ring. And I think they were saying maybe you should be more contemporary and add keyboards to your sound, get a little more new wavy production. And it didn't work, and the album didn't do as well as the previous 3. And then Vertical Smiles, I mean, that did nothing. So,
Jeff does have a good point. Mid-80s, most of these bands, these 70s bands try to make that. Do you think is this a valid question for you, John? Blackfoot started in the 70s. By the time we get to
79, Strike.
Yeah, but
that was
still,
the 3rd album.
But think about it. These bands starting to get to the 80s. They can't make that. They can't adapt. Thus, Blackfoot starts sounding like Foreigner, which, think about it. Foreigner 4, big record.
Yes.
In that era. I don't know. Maybe they couldn't make that transition.
I think it's a very valid point. Oh, Blackfoot Live. They
This
got
is
a lot
from
of
that
live
tour.
albums.
This is from the tour of the Siogo.
Is that Highway Song Live?
No, this has got Teenage Idol on it, and Ken Hensley's on this. So it was a King Biscuit show.
Oh, okay, gotcha. A Teenage Idol, that doesn't work either. I mean, a lot of the songs here they're starting. Teenage Idol was the one that when I was listening to that recently, I'm like, this sounds a little like Break It Up by Foreigner off of the 4 album, which came out in 81. So yeah, I think the record company was saying, you got to get a little more AOR, and it just doesn't work with them. This was the last album with Charlie Hargreaves, who was a wicked-ass guitar player. Doesn't get the credit. And then after he left, I mean, it was almost like Terry Kathleen Chicago. Let's put it that way. Because as great as Ricky Medlock is, he needed Charlie with him.
Going with Circle, Send Me an Angel, Hearts Grown Cold, Teenage Idol. This is actually my favorite Blackfoot album. Look at Eric Robertson. Okay, I'm sure everybody hears this stuff differently.
There's good stuff on it. I think
there's good stuff. That's what we're talking about. We're talking where the cracks are developing. This is the record. So yeah, there's good stuff here.
I do like Send Me an Angel.
Oh, and it didn't get any better with Vertical Smiles in 1987. Ricky Madlog and Black. What more can I say? It's a 1987 mess. Well, there you go.
I always heard it as a mess, and I never listened to it because I was like, okay, if enough people say it's a mess, I'm not going to check it out.
Oh my goodness!
Kind of like that Black
Get all
Sabbath.
5 of them for $20.
Well, you might as well get them. What a deal!
Why
If
you
you
can,
get
yeah,
it.
because what happens is when they run out of these, then you're buying them used for a couple $100.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. I'm
Crap.
sorry, Byron. What'd you say?
That Black Sabbath with Seventh Star with Tony Iommi kind of reminds me of the Blackfoot with Rick Medlock. Although the Black Sabbath was way better than the Blackfoot album.
Yeah, okay. I would hope so.
Yeah.
Well, you're Mr. Frickin' Frack, and perhaps the labels were pressing the artist to conform. Well, I don't know, but I think they were pressing them to, whatever the hit was. If there's a Yamaha DX7 on a track and it's a big hit, the record company's going, you know what? You should probably put some Fairlight or a DX7 on here or a drum machine, to get a hit. Of course they were doing that. Look at Cheap Trick. Listen to Standing on the Edge. Oh, don't get me started on Standing on the Edge. The album that could have been so great. Anyway,
a lot of times what happens is execs make those kind of boneheaded suggestions, and what people do is they tend to blame the instruments, they blame the keyboards, they blame the synthesizers, but it's not the instrument's fault. It's whatever suit told them that they had to put something in their band that wasn't already part of their band.
Exactly.
It's not the
Well
keyboard's
put.
fault. It's the suit's fault.
Yeah.
Go to eBay, Jeff.
Maureen says most of the 80s rock didn't have soul. It sucked.
That's the $20.
Maureen is more of a contemporary of mine, if I remember correctly, age-wise. And for somebody that was coming up probably when me and her did, yeah, the 80s, there was that sound. It was so polished. And the influx of MTV, where you also had to be this polished visual that went along with the music. For people of my age, it just all had an artificial veneer over all of it that didn't jibe with me as a child of the 70s, so to speak. So I know where you're coming from, Maureen.
See, I had more of a problem with legacy bands trying to make that transformation than I did with, so to speak, like Duran Duran, who came out in the 80s, or Thompson Twins, or Flock of Seagulls. I think those examples just absolutely wonderful. But some of those 70s bands, but the Heart album, 1985, I saw them on that tour. They were fine, but my God, it looked like Prince up on stage.
I think Hart was able to make that change. One of the few bands of the 70s that really did transition very well into the 80s. But can you imagine the pressure from those older bands trying to fit into this new wave 80s drum machine, cheesy keyboard paradigm when you're a guitar-based band?
Right.
And,
well, I think Heart's a whole other story, but I think once they lost Roger Fisher, that's where the crack started. Though I think Baby Lestrange is a good record, but that's where things started. Roger Fisher was an integral part to the way Heart sounded. And without him, Howard Leese is great. I think the guitars on Baby Lestrange sound absolutely wonderful, because that's Mike Flicker production. I think Mike Flicker really knew what to do with them. Great sounding records. And then once Mike Flicker left, see, Heart worked as a unit. It had to have the right chemistry. And I don't know, by the time you got to, Private Audition, there's a change right there. But Mike Flicker, as being the engineer, he was doing all that other stuff. I think it was great stuff. But I think, I don't know, that's a Heart thing. But I think Baby Lestrange is a good record. But man, you start missing Roger Fisher, who was a monster on guitar. Absolute monster. So there you go. I went on a Heart tangent. There you go. All right. Excellent. Let's see. Martin loves those Heart albums right after Baby Lestrange. He does not.
Yeah, he does.
He likes.
Oh, he does. He likes Passion Works a lot.
Well, I think Passion Works is pretty good.
Yeah. I do too.
But does he like Private Audition?
I think he does.
He likes
I
Private
think he
Audition?
does.
I think he likes them both.
Yeah, I'll be damned.
Well,
Well,
that's
I
Martin.
could be wrong. Well, he's a contrarian. Most people don't even realize the CD player is. Oh, Ken, I realize it. I realize
I
it.
do.
Oh, I do.
Oh, we all realize it. Hey, French, where have you been? How are you? Nice to see you. Oh, Jeff, don't. I love 38 Special. Oh no, I'm gonna take his wrench away.
Yeah.
Yeah, Martin is a big fan. Well, I think it's a good record. It is a good record. Private Audition, you ought to go see the ranking he and Pete did when they ranked Heart. Did Pete fall out of his chair when we got up to Private Audition and Martin put it like at number 2 or something? I have to watch it. I don't think I saw it.
I think Pete's numb to some of Martin's picks these days.
He's just his glazes over.
Well, no, you know what happens? If you guys have been watching the show, on Friday, Pete's like, I'm getting ready to come on. We're going to do JoJo Gun this Saturday. So tune in on Sunday for JoJo Gun ranking. But this might not make Martin's eyes roll. But when we were said that we're going to do a bread ranking, I thought Martin was just going to lose it. He went on that tirade about bread, and Pete was just laughing. In fact, every band that we've talked about, Player, all these weird offshoot Roadmaster, Martin just sits there and,
I love all that stuff.
it's great, because where else are we going to cover it?
I will never hate on bread. Too many fond memories.
It's a good catalog.
Yeah, I don't want to.
Yeah,
I don't want to
sure
get
you do.
myself in too much trouble, but I don't think Martin's actually ever heard Brad.
I don't think he will. He was talking about, I don't know, all those kids back in the early 70s. Come on, it was the early 70s, and they're listening to Bread? Oh, God, I wish
I
Martin
was
here.
listening to Bread and listening to Sabbath and Zeppelin at the same time. So
Well, tune in.
Yeah,
go
Kevin
ahead.
J. Stoll says he's with me. I don't know what. Maybe he means the age group thing and how the '80s hit us as far as taste. So thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, so tune in Sunday at 10 for JoJo Gun. Grew up with Bread and love the Carpenters. I don't have a problem with any of that. That Bread, okay, let me just say that. By looking at the Bread catalog, I would never have looked at the Bread catalog. So this caused me to go out, do the research, listen to the albums, and really, there's a lot of great stuff on those records.
Beautiful
For one,
memories.
production is top notch. Two, the songwriting is very good. David Gates, all these guys had cred. These were people that worked in the industry. They had years of experience. By the time they got there to do Bread, Bread came fully formed. They didn't really grow or anything. They already knew what they were doing.
And so poignant.
Watch that show Pete and I did on Bread. I'm just saying, you got to give them a chance.
So poignant. If you have a parent that you've lost, listen to Everything I Own. It's not about a lover. It's about a parent passed and what you would do to have a moment back with them. And that don't bring a tear to your eye. You ain't human.
You can get laid listening to Bread even if you're by yourself.
Well, I don't know about that.
Didn't work for old
Another thing that
DC.
a lot of thing that a lot of people don't know about Brad is that Brad had multiple songwriters who were kind of going like this, doing different kinds of songs. So there are lively and rockin' songs by Brad. And
Yeah,
so
a lot of competition.
They alternate between a lot of different styles, and it's very interesting to listen to Brad. That Brad album if you've never done it before.
Yeah, we're just saying, just go down the road, give it a shot. Let us know. Well, that's all we're about. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But I think there's a lot more to them than the stereotype. It's just all balance, because it's not. That's only a small sampling of their catalog.
Yeah, and
So
a
I'm just
lot of the
saying.
music was mood setting.
True.
Agreed.
He did produce Captain Beefheart, because David Gates was a producer. He did produce Captain Beefheart.
Jeff says, I just told him he's not human. I like you. I like you nonetheless. Not a Bread fan.
No, they did not do an album called Bait. But hey, we're just talking music. Your mileage may vary with it. All right.
They do have an album called Wonder, though.
Oh, very good.
Yes, the Carpenters did do the Clat too, and they did a nice version of it. I'll give the Carpenters some props. Billy Squire Signs of Life. Boy, there you go. All right. Well, let's keep moving.
Todd.
We're over to Todd Evans now. Todd, we're ready
Right.
for you.
I have to say, the one sentence that I never thought I'd hear is tune in Saturday for our JoJo Gunn ranking.
Oh.
That is a sentence that I never thought I would hear.
We're doing JoJo Gunn. Hey,
Run, run, run.
wait till
Great
we
tune.
do Black Oak, Arkansas, ladies and gentlemen.
And I wanted to say one real quick thing about what we were talking about before I move on to my next one, is that I think a lot of the people at the record company level didn't give the listeners enough credit, because if you'd have just went to Blackfoot and say, just keep being Blackfoot and make videos as yourselves, and then they just put them on MTV, I think they may have been surprised at how many people liked it.
Yeah, it could have been
a lot of mistakes like that were made.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to change once again. I'm going to change the
Oh God.
the genre, but I'm going to go with this. This is Duran Duran's Notorious, and so here's where I'm going with this.
Nice.
So this is a good album. I'll wait till the graphic comes up.
Well, I've been over this before. Where is Duran? There
All right,
it
I'll
is. It
keep
didn't
going.
load up. Hold on. No, you can show it. It's coming. But a lot of times these graphics, I preload them and they disappear. It is a weird fluke in StreamYard, and that's exactly what happened. There you go. Go ahead, Todd.
So this is a good album. I'm not saying that this is a bad album, but what happens on this album is they've lost their drummer Roger Taylor. They've lost Andy Taylor because he's only on part of it. And so what happens in this album is that they stop sounding like Duran Duran. They stop sounding like the band that was Duran Duran.
Correct.
They still make good records, but from this moment on, and especially after this, I think their most uneven album is Big Thing, even though I like parts of it. But this is kind of where it starts. I mean, and you've got some really cool stuff. American Science is a cool song. Skin Trade is like this really sleek thing. Hold Me is a good song. Meet El Presidente is a good song. But, you've got these other albums where you've got this thing going, especially Rio and Seven and the Ragged Tiger. They've got this whole 5 songs on side 1 and 4 songs on side 2. Side 2 is a little bit more prog rock than side 1 is. So you've got pop songs, and then you've got songs like The Chauffeur and like The Seventh Stranger. And you've got this thing going on where there's this real consistency with Duran Duran. And then you get to Notorious, and it's a pretty good album, but that kind of falls apart. So I don't think they were ever the same from this point on.
Is there anything as strong as
And a lot like Queen, they have good stuff, but they're just not the same.
Right.
So
Todd, is there anything as strong as that title track? That title track is amazing.
of Notorious?
Yes.
Oh yeah, it's great. Oh, I like that song.
Okay, but do
you know-
you think any other songs on there are as good as that one?
Oh yeah. I would say that. Well, I think the singles were Notorious, Skin Trade, and Meet El Presidente. I think all of those are good. The last song, Proposition, is very good. The song Hold Me is really good. The only thing about Proposition is that it's not The Chauffeur and it's not The Seventh Stranger.
Which are
it's
phenomenal.
It's not as good of closers as those two are, or Tel Aviv, which is also really cool. So yeah, I think it's a good band, and I think that Notorious is a great song. I think there's a couple of other great songs on this album, but this is where they really count 1, 2, 3. There's only 3 guys.
Yeah,
Two guys are gone.
Yeah, this is where Duran Duran lost me. Megan Paul did mention that Arcadia was great. I think the Arcadia album is brilliant. I think it would have been a great. It would have been a great album that would have come after the Tiger. I think it would have been great. It is the long lost Duran Duran album. You've got 3 of them on it, but the songwriting's good, the production's good. It just kind of follows the flow. This is like a complete 360, 180, whatever you want to call it. This is like, I get it. We're talking 86 too. So things are changing in the 80s. I can understand why they're doing it. But the magic that made Duran Duran so great on those first 4 albums is missing here. That trademark sound, we're missing it. Was it Andy Taylor? Well, he's on part of this. But
yeah, I don't think it was Andy Taylor, but I think that's just one more thing to fall to make it more difficult for them to sound like
this is where they lost me here. And I loved it. I remember when I first heard it, when I first heard Rio, it was one of those moments where all the clouds parted, the water parted. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Coming out in 1982 when I heard it, I had never heard anything like it. It was so fresh and new. I loved it.
I am so happy to have the introduction to Duran Duran that I had. I was in high school, and there was an exchange student from the UK, and we invited him to a party. And he came to the party, and he said, "You guys have to hear this." And he brought this and played it. When nobody had ever heard it. It wasn't on MTV. It wasn't on the radio. And that's where I heard it, was this Brit that I just barely knew, who said, "You guys have to check this album out." And I think that's probably the best introduction I could have ever gotten to that band.
Oshni, you're close. It was cocaine. It was cocaine, not crack. Notorious. Wait a minute.
I still think Seven and the Ragged Tiger is still good.
I think it's a great record. And you know what? We could go a little audiophile on this. That record, okay, the CD, the original CD that came out, absolutely sounds wonderful. You can crank it up. It's real clean sounding. It is a beautiful sounding CD. I don't know if people are CD people or vinyl people, but for a CD, that record doesn't need anything. Wonderful, wonderful record. I like it. I like it better now than then. I think it's a great record.
Yeah, that original Capitol CD sounds great. And you know, the album sounds so good that the remastered version that came out years later, they couldn't ruin it. Sometimes
they couldn't ruin it.
Albums sound so good that no matter what you do to them, they're still good. So, yeah, and the record sounds great too. Last thing, I think, produced by Alex Sadkin before he passed away.
I believe that was it.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Steve
I like
Ferrone
his
is
work.
great. Peter Jones, I agree. Steve Ferrone's good.
He's great.
Yeah.
But I like Alex's production. He did great work with Thompson Twins. Great.
Yeah.
Great production. I like a lot of his stuff. Check him out, but a sad loss because he was a good producer.
Yeah.
I liked it when they teamed up with Robert Palmer, made a remake of Bang a Gong. I like Power Station too.
God, Power Station. How about Tony Thompson on drums on that album?
Tony Thompson, yeah.
A machine.
You come out of your seat.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
I like Power Station. Okay, not a bad one,
like
though. I prefer Rio. Well, Rio, I think, is the crowning achievement. That has everything.
I think we probably all agree that is.
No weak songs on that. Everything worked. Because, some of those later Duran Duran albums, you could say that the songwriting's a bit sketchy. Yeah. Not during this early era. Even Seven Ragged Tiger, I think, is... I mean, you could have an argument that maybe they weren't quite as good, but hey, there's a lot of cocaine on that record, and I think they sounded great on it. I don't have a problem with it. Here we go. Arcadia, So Red the Rose is an excellent album. Side 2 is fantastic. George, you're right. If anyone has not heard the Arcadia album and you like Duran Duran, at least Todd and I could highly recommend picking that up. Yeah. Great record. Love Duran Duran. Todd is exactly right.
Thanks, Trey.
What? Here we go. Elder, what the hell are John and Nick looking at?
That's a really good question.
I don't know. Peter Jones, the cracks may show that Duran Duran still produced an album that far exceeded what Queen and many other bands mentioned did. Interesting.
Something to chew on.
That's something to chew on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Eric Robertson says Tony Thompson doesn't play drums. He obliterates drums.
God, could you? It's like, man, it's like, oh God, I can't keep up with the chat. The chat is way out of control. We'll go down to the end. Yeah, Rio was perfect for MTV. A lot of that was timing. Mm-hmm. If they hadn't had those videos, and if they hadn't have been like artistic statements, we might not have ever heard of Duran Duran. I don't know, but you cannot deny that, man, the work on those Duran Duran videos were absolutely beautiful. That Duran Duran Rio period, wonderful.
It was everything. It was good-looking guys producing top pop music, and attention in detail went into those videos as well. So
Yeah.
boom, boom, boom.
Ken saw Duran Duran in the late 80s and tickets were $25. I saw
Yeah, that was expensive back then.
Megan Paul says they're looking at her.
Wow.
Wow, Megan Paul. Don't leave a mess.
We don't know. Maybe they were.
But I saw Duran Duran on the 7 and the Ragged Tiger tour up in Cleveland. So glad I went. Andy Taylor, they were a machine. Wonderful. Wonderful. God dang. And I was so into them then. Tony Thompson on Bowie's Serious Moonlight tour and video is epic. I have a full soundboard rehearsal recording. Nice, Peter Jones. Always nice to hear that. Yeah, Sting and Gilmore are on the album. So is Grace Jones.
Yep.
Power Station Pool with
Yeah,
Michael
and I saw
DeBar.
that, and Michael DeBar was pretty bad.
Yeah, I didn't
he
see that.
He didn't learn the lyrics. He was singing the lyrics wrong. It was
No excuse for that.
Okay, I do have a problem with this. Alex did do Foreigner Agent Provocateur, and I can't stand that record.
Oh, I like that album.
You do?
I'll side with George on that. Yeah.
I don't like it. It just, something's wrong. Something's off. That's where I think cracks form. They never recovered after that. Of course, maybe, Foreigner had their moment. They got to that point. Foreigner was the plateau, and they had to come down. That's what I think. You can't write it forever. I
think inside information is where the cracks.
All right. Well, it could be. All right. See, we all hear things differently, and that's why we're talking this stuff. I recall that in my high school, all the girls were fans of Duran Duran, which meant that as a dedicated metalhead, I felt compelled to dislike them. Well,
I'm right there with you, Elder.
Well,
I was that same way in high
but
school.
I remember,
but I was a closet fan. I actually kind of liked a lot of those early songs.
I like to straddle a lot of different worlds, because if you gave them a little bit of due, it could pay off. If you were just dissing them for what they listened to, they might hold it against you. Yeah. And not in a good way.
I did go out of my way to find girls on film the video back then. So
see, how many of you guys were completely bummed when you found out about Robert Palmer wasn't going to do the tour? Yeah, you got to have Robert Palmer. God. Yeah, oh my God. That would have been great. It was I like Power Station.
I was bummed about two things about that tour, and I'm going to get made fun of, but I'm going to say this anyway.
Go ahead. It's all right.
The opening band for the U.S. dates for Power Station the opening band was supposed to be Spandau Ballet, and they pulled out. And nobody knew because there was no internet. And so I went to the show and they just weren't there. There was no way to find out. So yeah, I really wanted to see Spandau Ballet.
I would have probably surprises
no one on this panel, but
it's true.
Back in high school, I didn't like DC until I attended one of his vaudeville soirees.
I get you out there doing the Charleston. It's all over, baby.
Wow, that's dating yourself, Schnee. Let's see. Power Station was on my... Oh, were they? Who could measure up to Robert Palmer? And that's the other thing. A lot of people don't mention that Robert Palmer catalog. Sneaking Sally Through the Alley is a great... He has a lot of great records.
Really does. Really
Sneaking Sally Through the Alley is a wonderful... That is a great record.
Very overlooked artist.
What's
Heavy
that?
Nova, yeah, Heavy Nova.
Heavy Nova's good, yeah.
I like Heavy Nova, yeah.
Oh, Perv, Girls on Film. Megan Paul. What is happening with you? Megan, I was a much different person as a teenager. Palmer was a master, may he rest in peace. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. Well, we went around twice. We're just shy of 10 minutes, so... I guess we're going to end it here. Wait a minute. As far as drugs and rock, I went with Dylan, Willie Nelson concert. Didn't have to do drugs, just be out in the field part of the stadium.
We're touring this summer.
Wow. Yeah, I've got the Detectives album too. I think that Detectives album's okay.
One good track, I agree. Although I think
all right.
maybe it's like a half a good track.
The first album is a little better than what followed. I do like some of the songs on that first one.
That was okay. Just picked up. All right. Well, I think we've done it. I think we have. Well, we just barely scraped the surface tonight. We only got through 2 of our choices, and we've got way more choices that we can talk about.
That was a lot of fun.
It's a great show.
Yeah.
So if you want us to do a part 2, we can do a part 2 in September. Panel, if you're all game, I'm game. All right. I'll send out some dates tomorrow. We've had a long show. I don't know if Sea of Tranquility started, but we still have 77 people watching, so I'm assuming not. So at this point, I think this is a great time to part 3. We'll do it in September. We'll get the same crew back, and we will be back with the rest of our picks. And it's a great discussion. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you didn't, please leave a thumbs up. Please do. Please like, subscribe if you haven't. We had a good night. We had like 80-some people watch at one point. Things are going well in the warehouse, ladies and gentlemen, and I couldn't do it without any of these gentlemen on the panel. I couldn't do it with anybody in the chat. It's not me. It's the guests that make this show. So I want to thank the guests tonight. BM Bolt, John the Music Nut, Johnny Metal, DC Tune Time with Todd Evans, and Todd Evans has been with me since the very first damn show.
How about that? Salute.
Yeah.
Salute.
Pretty sure it was you and I doing the first show. Pretty close. Pretty damn close. All right, so we'll see ya. Right. So, depends on what they did. So, all right. You guys have a good night. Enjoy Hudson Valley Squares. Tune into SOT on Sunday for JoJo Gunn. All right, everybody, have a good one and keep it real and
keep it clean.
Keep it clean. All right. See you, everybody.